Well, that went better than we expected it to go, don't you think? Yeah, you can say that again. That was very unexpected. I don't even know how to feel. I think I feel this happiness coming out of me. We are the champions, my friends. You know what? Just so I don't become that, I'm just going to stay cautiously optimistic. It's a good start, but there's 81 to go. I literally don't care that it's the first game. It is 2 points, and we are the best team in the Pacific Division on day one. Nothing can kill my mood right now. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Vegas Golden Knights win game one of the regular season against the Los Angeles Kings by a final score of 4-3. Now, the build-up around this game was months in the waiting to see how the Golden Knights would respond to their first ever experience of missing the playoffs, and clearly we came out with a little bit of a fire, and we finally got to see what the new Golden Knights are going to look like. With their lineup consisting of the new look first line of Smith, Eichel, and Kessel, second line of Howden, Stevenson, and Stone, finally finding somebody to work with those two, maybe, who knows, we'll see what they've got. Marchessault, Carlson, and Amadio, and a fourth line of Cotter, Waugh, and Colasar. Defense pairings of Martinez, Petrangelo, McNabb, Theodore, and Hutton, Whitecloud. And in net, the goaltending battle features a new face and somebody who has graced the league for the NHL, or graced the NHL for a very long time in the forms of Logan Thompson and Jonathan Quick. Now, there are a couple of notable names out of the lineup for the Golden Knights tonight, primarily Will Carrier, who would be slotting into where Paul Cotter is when he inevitably comes back and is healthy. And then there's Nicholas Hague, who, after just signing that free agent extension, is still on the injury reserve list, likely to be reintegrated into the home opener, Game 2 against the Chicago Blackhawks, or by later on in the week. Obviously, he won't miss much playing time, and this may be just to get him into the system, but nonetheless, he's still not playing in Game 1 against the Los Angeles Kings. And so with that, it's time to, as the officials say, get the 2022-23 NHL regular season underway. And underway the game did go. One of the things that I immediately found funny, almost as a bit of callback to vintage Golden Knights hockey, is opening up with the fourth line of Paul Cotter, Nick Waugh, and Keegan Colasar. Now that is just a line combination that I've always been a big fan of, particularly in the preseason. Paul Cotter definitely earned his spot on the opening night roster, whether it be through the injury to Will Carrier or on his own merit. It's kind of a moot point since he was out there for the very first second of Golden Knights hockey in 2022-23. Another side note, Logan Thompson's gold mask finally came in, and oh boy, it's pretty. It's very bright, giving me vintage Marc-Andre Fleury vibes. And if he can bring some of that skill and energy that the Flower did for the first 4 seasons, especially with his golden gear, I think we'll be onto something. And it was very obvious early on that Logan Thompson was going to have his work cut out for him tonight. It didn't take long for the Golden Knights to kind of get themselves into a little bit of trouble, as Phil Kessel, in his first ever shift as a Vegas Golden Knight, takes a high sticking penalty at 1:13. Not his proudest moment, but it's okay. He's still learning. He's an old dog, but he's still okay. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. And the benefit of the fact that, and he benefited from the fact that the Golden Knights were actually able to really just get it going on the penalty kill, which is a new and yet also very old concept for the Golden Knights. A Los Angeles Kings turnover in the middle of the power play resulted in what would come to be a very important moment in the game, and it is that Mark Stone is back. He looks fully healthy. He looks like he is in vintage form, and I would even go so far as to say mid-season form on what has to be his second shift of the hockey game, taking it coast to coast. And while he didn't score, he wound up doing a very good job moving the puck, killing it, being a good two-way forward, and I believe he registered a shot. With that being said, the Kings weren't really able to muster very much for the remainder of that power play, and they didn't even register a shot, but had a couple of strong point shots. Alec Martinez laying down the body, blocking a couple of them, so the puck never got to Logan Thompson. The first really good chance of the year came by way of Zach Whitecloud driving down the near wing and firing at high glove on Jonathan Quick. Obviously, Quick being one of the smaller goalies, but also giant in the goalie sense. He was able just to make what appeared to be a routine save, but it was a good opportunity set up by Mark Stone by finding an open patch of ice to feed it to Whitecloud, who gave the Knights their first scoring opportunity. And now we're going to talk about that moment, the moment that scared the ever-living bejesus out of every Golden Knights fan. It was one of those freak moments, and I would go so far as to call it the break of the year already. Game is 0-0 at this point. Kings come flying down 2-on-1, go to feed the puck across, goes off of a Golden Knights defender skate, and hits the inside of the post and stays out, just finding its way to squeak under Logan Thompson, and he was able to draw a whistle. That was probably the most fortunate bit of physics and friction that anybody has ever seen, given that it basically allowed the game to stay scoreless. And, if that puck is one more inch to the left, it's a goal, and the Kings take a 1-0 lead. That being said, the Kings were able to take the momentum from this break of the year candidate already and really use it as a catalyst to get their game going. While they hadn't registered a shot yet, they had been doing a good job of pushing the pressure and pushing the pace. And at the 10-minute mark, they were finally able to land their first shot on net in the form of a snapshot from the high slot from Kevin Fiala, being their star pickup in the offseason. So it's about time, and it's fitting that he would register the first shot. That being said, the honor of the first goal of the Western Conference, first goal of the Western Conference in the United States, because we're not going to talk about those games Nashville's been playing already, goes to the LA Kings in the form of Gabe Vilardi, putting the Kings up 1-0. It was one of those moments where if the situation had gone just a little bit differently in either direction, the Golden Knights would have been better for it. As Ben Hutton lost his stick or had it slashed out of his hand or broken, point is he didn't have a stick, and the Kings were able to isolate the wounded defenseman like a lion hunting down a wounded gazelle on the Serengeti and ultimately capitalize on that, putting it through and off the post behind Logan Thompson and ultimately in, taking a 1-0 lead. With the stat line reading Vilardi from Byfield and Iafallo at 10:36 of the first period. At this point, the Golden Knights had landed the first 6 shots, and the Kings would go on to land the subsequent following 7 shots, and that was with about 8 minutes to go in the period, so about a minute and a half after the goal. The Golden Knights managed their first semblance of offensive zone time with about 5 minutes and 30 seconds to go in the period. That is following what I consider to be a momentum-changing hit in the form of Braden McNabb absolutely going through someone, as he has done so many times, especially when they're chipping the puck, and he just lowers the shoulder and says, you know what? Go through me, I dare you. And it was unstoppable force meets immovable object, and immovable object won this time, as it has so many times. The first offensive zone was set up. The first offensive zone time was really set up by impressive forecheck by the fourth line. They had looked really good all game, and this was really just the precursor to what the remainder of their game was going to look like. Pitting the puck deep, cycling it low, bringing the puck out front, and ultimately doing good puck retrieval when they would have the puck inevitably knocked off their stick and or saved. This allowed for the Knights to do an on-the-fly line change, get the first line out there, and ultimately end up with a good setup from Jack Eichel on a snap shot. Now, Jack Eichel wasn't done with this period, as with about a minute to go, he took a really smart pass from Phil Kessel coming out of the neutral zone, went in all alone, and ultimately just missed the net. Quick came, I'm convinced, out to the blue line to meet Jack Eichel in this shot, so there really wasn't much room to shoot it. So the miss is kind of forgivable, but it was a good turn of momentum for the Golden Knights. This would continue as the Knights would go to their first power play of the regular season when Mikey Anderson took a cross-checking penalty at 19:29. And I hate it when penalties carry over. I just find that the ones that carry over from period to period are never really good on either end. However, the first half of that was very much proven wrong to me in this case, as the Golden Knights had so many good chances in 30 seconds remaining in the first period. I think Bradley Smith could have scored like twice. But ultimately, the horn sounds at the end of the first period with the game being a little bit out of reach for the Golden Knights, with it being 1-0. We were leading in shots 16-7, as we had basically dominated the play following their 7 shots in a row, and we were out hitting them 15-8, proof that the checking line was doing its good job. The fourth line has been positively buzzing through 20 minutes, which is obviously a good thing. And it's a tough break on Ben Hutton losing his stick, having it slashed out of his hand, leading to the first goal. And Thompson did well to weather the other 6 shots that he fielded in a row in that stretch in the middle of the period. And so in all intents and purposes, it very much should be 2 or 3 to nothing Kings, and yet it also could be 2 or 3 to 1 favoring the Knights. So the second period will be a good indicator as to what the rest of the game is going to look like. And a good indicator of what the game was going to look like is exactly what the second period wound up being. Now, the Golden Knights had the remaining minute 30 of the power play they got at the end of the first period, which they weren't really able to do much with. Spent a lot of time in the neutral zone, kind of got stuck, weren't really able to get into the zone, and ultimately they weren't able to recreate the opportunities they had gotten in the 30 seconds at the end of the first period. That being said, there's always a fun moment for about 20 seconds at the end of a penalty where the opponent always has some weird personnel on the ice. And the Golden Knights seem to have knew this because they took advantage of just what's got to be one of the shakier line changes that has happened in NHL history, and was able to get behind the Kings' defense 3-on-1 in the forms of William Karlsson, Jonathan Marchessault, and Phil Kessel. And ultimately, the play read Marchessault to Karlsson, Karlsson to Marchessault to the back of the net, tying the game up at 1. If we had wound back the clock 6 years, the combination of Marchessault and Karlsson would not be entirely foreign. And given the current roster construction, that may be the way it is. Phil Kessel in that rush was a surprise, and although he didn't get a point, he still did a really good job, setting up and being there and being an option, taking Quick's attention almost off of Marchessault and onto Karlsson or Kessel as the potential shooters. That being said, it's 1-1. I'm happy. First goal of the season for the Golden Knights goes to Jonathan Marchessault. He's 1/30th of the way to replicating what his production was last season. Stat line reading Marchessault from Karlsson at 1:41 of the second period. Now, pretty shortly after this, it was pretty clear that the momentum was swinging our way as the Golden Knights got to go back to the power play in the form of an Alex Edler cross-checking penalty at 2 minutes 53. The cool thing about the first wave of this power play is it was really, really heavy on the stardom. A lot of the offense, if not all of the offense, was running through Jack Eichel's stick or Jack Eichel's brain. Clearly, he's been integrated really well into the system. And while they weren't really able to muster much on the first wave, it was still a really good sign of how the system is working. Second wave was mildly less successful, but Phil Kessel put in a lot of work keeping the puck in and playing very cerebrally like we'd expect a Phil Kessel to play on a power play line that's pretty much chock full of talent. Ultimately, they weren't able to do anything on the power play, and the game stayed tied up at 1. Kings had a really, really good chance at the end of our power play, capitalizing on the mismatch of mans in the other direction. And ultimately, we were bailed out by another exceptional save from Logan Thompson. And then pretty shortly after Thompson bailed us out, Jonathan Quick had to bail out the Kings as Brett Howden was able to get behind the Kings' defense in on a breakaway, found a soft spot, and whether it be the combination of Roy chasing down or Jonathan Quick being Jonathan Quick, he wasn't able to put it home. I think that's the 5th breakaway in the last 2 games against the LA Kings, including the last preseason game that Brett Howden has had. So clearly he has found a soft spot for them, and I hope that he's able to keep exploiting that over the course of the regular season against not LA Kings. Again, following that, the Golden Knights go back to the power play again in the form of a Victor Arvidsson slashing penalty at 13:10, which broke up a really good chance from Jack Eichel. The first wave of the power play did literally nothing, not even being able to get the puck in the zone. And the second wave was somehow worse than the first wave, thus being it was 2 minutes off the clock and maybe 15 minutes off my lifespan in general because of how painful it was to watch that power play. Hey, I'm not all sunshine and rainbows. I'm going to be critical of the power play because it just needs to be better after last season. Arguably the most funny linguistical thing that happened is a little bit of Wah on Roy melee fisticuffs action after a whistle late in the second period. Seeing 2 people with the exact same characters on the back of their jersey but pronounced entirely different just makes me chuckle a little bit on the inside. And the fact that they went fist to fist without fighting was just pretty funny to me. It's one of those interesting things. Um, the Golden Knights tried to make it interesting getting out of the second period with Zach Whitecloud taking a cross-checking penalty with exactly a minute to go. This wound up being the world's shortest power play, though, as Martinez forced a penalty forced a penalty about 20 seconds later. It was a really stupid penalty that Kevin Fiala took. He just decided to ride his elbow out and test the integrity of Alec Martinez's lower jaw. That being said, you can't do that, and Fiala got caught for an illegal check to the head at 19:24. It was back and forth in the early stages of the 4-on-4, and ultimately with the horn going out or to mark the end of the second period, really the only one that did anything in the 4-on-4 was Logan Thompson making a pretty average pedestrian save that looked pretty exceptional in the light of the regular season. So that being said, at the end of two, the game is knotted at 1. Golden Knights are out shooting the Kings 31-22 overall in the game at this point, leading in hits 23-17, but only mustering about 40% from the faceoff dot. The fourth line is still solid, and Marchessault had a really strong second period on top of the goal. He played really smart two-way hockey, and he was just a force to be reckoned with out on the ice. So the Golden Knights are going to start the third period with about a minute of 4-on-4, and then about 20-ish seconds of power play time left. That's going to be the second period in a row where there's been some odd man carryover, which is always interesting coming into a fresh period, fresh sheet of ice. And with the fresh sheet of ice, apparently somebody decided to turn the sliders up on this game because the third period got crazy. Now, both penalties, the penalty to Zach Whitecloud and the subsequent power play for the Golden Knights on the penalty to Kevin Fiala, both ended without issue, and we went proceeding back to 5-on-5 play. Now, if you watched the Golden Knights last season, you'll know that we seem to enjoy 5-on-5 a lot more than we enjoy the man advantage, and that was pretty obvious because of what happened next. It was just a kind of a freak play. Golden Knights get the puck high in the zone, fire it at Jonathan Quick. It's blocked, goes back to, I believe it was Chandler Stevenson in the slot or someone who fired it again, pinballs off of what I can only assume to be 37 feet, and winds up hitting Jack Eichel right in the leg, kicking directly down onto a stick blade, and he's able to go shelf over a sprawling Jonathan Quick to put the Golden Knights ahead 2-1. Now, this was a really good goal for Jack Eichel to open his scoring season with. It was smart. He was in the right spot. He made a quick, decisive move towards the net and made sure to elevate the puck to where there was no chance that the epitome of flexibility in Jonathan Quick could get to that puck. And so there was no doubt, and it was off the back bar and out in a hurry. So, yeah, good start for the Golden Knights. Eichel from Stevenson and Smith at 1:27. Really good way to get the period started. And immediately after the Golden Knights were able to take the lead, Brett Howden again tried to extend the lead again. He's been all over the Kings recently. He had a really good chance, and it just wound up hitting the post off of a forced turnover by Mark Stone. That might be important later on in the game. That being said, all good things must come to an end, and the Golden Knights' lead lasted exactly just under 3 minutes. As Adrian Kempe puts the Kings back into a tie at 2-2. This play really belongs to the experience of Anze Kopitar. He receives a pass from Sean Durzi from the point, and he essentially walks down, fakes the shot, pulls Logan Thompson out of his net on the right side, goes around the net, and feeds it to Adrian Kempe, who is just wide open in the front. He's got a 6x4, and the guy makes enough money. You know he's not going to miss that, and of course he doesn't miss that. With the stat line reading Kempe from Kopitar and Durzi at 4:02. So the game kind of hits a lull for the next couple of minutes until the Golden Knights get to go back to the power play. Their fifth power play of the game. Well, fourth plus about 20-something seconds, so technically fifth. When Philip Deneau takes a slashing penalty at 7:03. And this was all because Mark Stone decided to go just insane and force like 7 turnovers in the span of about 30 seconds. So the entire penalty, the entire reason we get to go to the man advantage is Mark Stone has better hand-eye coordination than anybody else on the ice, and he decided to show off a little bit because apparently he thinks the NHL forgot how good he is last season. I know I didn't, and this game simply showed that I was not holding out for nothing. He is good. And the Golden Knights absolutely make the Kings pay for this transgression. Power play scoring wasn't always our strong suit, but we looked like a well-oiled machine on this power play, working the puck from high to low, behind the net, in the form of Nick Waugh, who passed the puck up to Alex Pietrangelo, worked it in the middle, saw William Karlsson in the high slot with his stick perfectly presented for a tip, and fires what I can only describe as a perfect shot pass off the blade of William Karlsson's stick, off the right post, and in, giving the Golden Knights a 3-2 lead. It was probably one of the prettiest power play goals you will see in the Western Conference for the first month of the season. It's going to take a lot to top that, and given that it happened on opening night, hopefully we're able to build off of that, keep working on the chemistry that allowed a play like that to occur, and have it be more of a common occurrence, because I like celebrating on power plays, let's be real. Stat line reading: Karlsson from Pietrangelo and Waugh at 7:17 of the third period. And if I was in the scorer's booth, I would have given a third assist to Mark Stone, because he was the one who managed to draw a penalty from essentially nothing. And just like what happened after the Golden Knights scored their second goal, they come right back out and try and get the second one. That was always been a problem in our entire franchise's history. We get the 1-goal lead, we can't get the 2-goal lead. Clearly, the emphasis is on getting that second goal, because the fourth line came out and they almost cashed in for the first time in the season. They've been having a really good game, and they just weren't able to put it home in a net front scramble. Just the most fourth line goal that could have ever possibly been scored if it had been scored. So all in all, fourth line looking good. It's a good compliment to the first line. It's a great line to put out after you score a goal, clearly, because it worked out really, really well. So then the game always gets interesting. You get later on, you get to the back half of the third period, things start pressing, and we didn't exactly make our lives very easy. Phil Kessel gets on the score sheet again, this time for slashing at 10:54. It was pretty dumb. It was kind of a bad penalty. It's not one you want to take when the play is being broken up anyway by your defenseman, and the only reason you took it is because you're kind of behind the play. That being said, I can't get mad at him. He was back-checking, so that's better than I would do in the NHL. It's just one of those penalties that you kind of shake your head at, especially when you see it on the replay and you see that he took it on somebody who was pretty much away from the puck. That being said, the first wave for the Kings power play was effective, but they didn't really get any clear shots. And the second wave of their power play was pretty stressful, but they also didn't land a lot of clear shots. However, they took the last 5-10 seconds of their power play to really get set up in the offensive zone. And as the as the penalty was expiring to Phil Kessel, as he was leaving the box, Arthur Kaliev took advantage of what I can only call a slight defensive breakdown and a little bit of bad luck, and knotted the game back up at 3. The goal was one of those moments where the puck was sitting there and you could see where it needed to go for a Golden Knights perspective, which is up and out, and you could see where it was going to go, which was hopefully up and out, but it was a 50-50 puck. And ultimately, the Kings won that coin flip. Were able to kick the puck over to a wide-open Kaliev in the low slot, who fired it to the left of Logan Thompson. From the replay, it looks like it went through him. I think it was just a good shot on a play that he wasn't quite expecting in net. But regardless of how it went in or what caused it to go in, game is now 3-3. Stat line reading: Kaliev from Moore and Velarde at 12:58. So 2-point game for Gabe Velarde. Not bad. He had a good preseason, but I am not a Kings fan, so that's the only amount of praise I'm going to give them tonight. Following their goal, the Kings really dominated the play. They really forced a lot of the issue. Sure, the Golden Knights had a couple of sparse offensive zone rushes at about the 4-minute mark, and then again with about 2.5 minutes to go. They weren't really able to sustain anything, and while the game was, from the outside, a lot of neutral zone hockey, it felt to me from watching that the Kings really were in control of the game. And that was really illustrated by the fact that they were just kind of playing to get to overtime. Following a good chance for the Golden Knights with about 1 minute and 20 seconds to go, Kings would choose to win an offensive zone faceoff and just sit behind the net from about the 1:08 mark all the way down to about 35 seconds, where I assumed they were just going to go for another rush. Last rush. If they score, woo, they win. If they don't, everybody gets a point. We go to 3-on-3 overtime. And that's just the way it is. Well, clearly Alex Pietrangelo had a flight to catch, as he jumped the stretch pass from Dursey coming out from behind the net, which I still don't know what they thought as a Kings player was going to happen when you send a puck 180 feet and you have a Stanley Cup winning defenseman covering the guy you're going to pass standing still on the blue line. Either way, motives aside, Pietrangelo cuts off the pass, tips it up to Chandler Stevenson, who brings the Golden Knights in 3-on-3. He draws two defenders as he's coming down the right wing, and ultimately Mark Stone's able to slide into the middle of the ice and find a little bit of a soft spot in the Kings' zone coverage. Perfect pass from Chandler Stevenson, hits Stone, he curls, drags it to the middle of the ice, sees a window, hits the window, and sends us home happy, putting the Golden Knights up 4-3, going basically post in on Jonathan Quick, top right corner. Now, I basically broke my desk jumping up and down after seeing this goal because this was basically the cap to a perfect night for the captain. He looked great in every facet of the game, and it was only fitting that he would be the one to walk away with the game-winning goal for the Golden Knights tonight to give us our first 2 points of the regular season. Stat line reading Stone from Stevenson and Pietrangelo at 19:36 of the third period. That being said, the Kings pulled a goalie, but they aren't really able to do anything. Pietrangelo hits the post going for the empty net, but at that point, game's over. Golden Knights bag a big 2 points in their opening game of the season. Currently batting 1,000 for points and wins on the regular season. I wonder how long that's going to last. Hopefully it lasts for the entire season because that would be awfully historic. Final stats of the game, we were pretty solid the whole night. Leading in shots 51-30, 51% from the faceoff dot, and only 3 giveaways. We were basically dominating in the puck control department, and when we had it, we weren't going to give it away. The fourth line looked really, really good on the forecheck. Paul Cotter is very much ready for the NHL, and while he didn't score, while he didn't feature on the stat sheet and basically any capacity, he was a very much impactful player on the night. And honestly, I'm totally here for it. If he can continue to do what he's been doing throughout the entire preseason and now through one regular season game, I think he's going to be gunning for a full-time roster spot. And so I would be worried if I was in that bottom 6 without like a clearly defined role because Paul Cotter's coming. And whether or not he is an everyday right now or whether or not he is forcing his way into the lineup, I don't mind because it's providing some really good hockey in the meantime. And finally, we can't go throughout this game looking at it as a whole without considering what the high-end talent did. You know, one of the knocks on the Knights last year is that we were relying too much on our depth scoring. Well, that was not the case tonight. Goals from Marchessault, Eichel, Carlson, and Stone. All top 6 forwards, all players you expect to be filling the net up this season, and they all decided to get their scoring campaign started on game 1. So the high-end talent really came through, and if that's indicative of what the regular season as a whole is going to look like, which I really hope it is, all those players are in for some really good seasons. Eichel being hopeful for 100 points, Stone looking for a bounce-back season, Carlson looking to justify the contract that he has and make up for his production, and Marchessault looking to repeat what was a career-defining season last season. All the players with motives to score, scored, and I don't see why that trend is going to end anytime soon. So just a quick recap, Golden Knights win 4-3, first game of the regular season for 2022-23. It's a great day to be a Golden Knights fan. Home opener coming up on October 13th at home against the Chicago Blackhawks, who, just for reference, will have to watch the Colorado Avalanche raise the Stanley Cup banner the night before in Colorado. So pretty tough matchup for the Chicago Blackhawks, pulling the Stanley Cup champion and the Golden Knights back-to-back nights, both on the road. Hopefully things go well for the Knights in their next game, as I would love to see some medieval maniacs really happy with a good home opener. The product is always nice. And so with that being said, I can't wait to see what the Knights have planned for their home opener. I'm sure the gold carpet is going to be amazing. And I will give you all the rundown of what hopefully will be a great game between the Golden Knights and the Chicago Blackhawks on October 13th. So if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe for more, as I'm doing this for every regular season game. And I will catch you guys in the next one.